through my work with young people and my personal experiences, I'm aware that for many young people, there's a distrust and stigma between them and the police. What best practices have you heard about that have been shared between forces or even community initiatives outside of the police that could help in breaking down the stigma? And do you think that a shift in this is needed for the police to successfully communicate with young people regarding COVID-19?
So from our point of view, even before this started, my colleague that works on this stuff on a national level and influences national change, she surveyed young people nationwide to find out actually how is it that they want to engage with police. And there was two really clear answers for young people. So one, so overarching was come and meet us in our space. Don't expect us to come to you. And that being online. So we've got the digital engagement team that run the police.uk.insta channel. And that's one of the ways we try and get a message across. And then the other place was in schools. Actually, young people were really clear that they wanted us back in their schools, not in the sense of being there to police them, but in the sense of being there to talk to them, deliver them up-to-date and trusted information, and just start that building that lifelong relationship that they're going to have with the police. But actually that one's the one that's really difficult because all the will in the world, we can't meet kids in schools at the moment. So between me and Keith and our other colleagues, it's an almost daily conversation. Is actually what do we do to replace that right now? And we haven't got all the answers. We don't exactly know the best way to be doing it, which is why I was really up for having conversations like this with you guys and with others. Because actually we'd like you to say, actually in the absence of school or other obvious places, where do you think we should come and talk to young people instead?
I know like back in, I think it was 2014 in Sussex, there was the Sussex Youth Police Commission Independent Advisory Group, I believe it's called, that was set up to sort of influence the relationships between the police and young people. I'm not sure if that's still active or if there's still like a sort of advisory towards that builds that bridge between young people and the police. But I feel like things like that, like frameworks that can sort of middleman that process and facilitate the conversations that can be had to sort of break down some of the stigma and build trust through like common interests and things like that can be really useful. So even though you can't do that face-to-face school engagement or workshops or whatever it was that you were doing before, still being able to have that engagement like you're doing now, for example, with young people that have got direct experience or work with other young people or whatever, that can then influence sort of some of the ways, alternative routes of engagement and stuff, like even like Zoom calls and things like this, just actually getting that information across and making sure that young people feel like there is space to be heard around what they think there should be happening. So I think that's a really good point. I definitely agree with that.
Brilliant. That's really useful. Thank you. I think Emma had a conversation too.
I was just asking, like, during this like pandemic, obviously, because you said you can't go to schools and you can't do this and you can't do that. Have the police really thought about like their use of social media during this to like keep in contact with young people? Because like making videos and sharing them on social media platforms will go really far, because all we do now, because we don't have anything to do, is sit on our phones. Like we're always scrolling through Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everything. If you want to stay in contact with young people, I think that the best thing to do is make these videos like cartoons, like explaining stuff, like funny videos, that like videos of you guys just telling stories about why you wanted to be a police officer, or like why you feel like it's so important to protect them, and like setting out guidelines in these videos that are easy to understand so that everyone sort of gets it. I think that would really help communicating with young people. And if they don't want to hear it, they can just click off. But I think a lot of people would really appreciate that.
Brilliant. No, that's great. Thank you.
I think also with that, Roisin, just like what you were saying earlier, in the sense that you'd kind of approach the situation and saying, like, we're all in the same boat, we're all in the same situation here, so kind of just making them see, like, we really don't know any more than you do, so we're kind of taking steps as and when you are. So just kind of letting us know that we're kind of all working in this together, rather than kind of against each other, as everyone, this kind of stigma around it, you know, with the police and things, just kind of that in this situation, look, it's a global pandemic. We never thought this was going to happen. So why don't, for one situation in our lifetime, we all work together on it rather than against each other, you know?
Yeah, brilliant.
Fantastic answers from everyone there. It's really interesting to listen to all of that. And yeah, I do think social media is the only way that we can kind of keep in contact, and this is why conversations like this are really important.
So the second question I wrote, we kind of touched on a little bit before, but it's more about like your approach to the engagement of young people. So again, sort of through speaking to some of the young people that I've been working with, and I know there's various reasons, like we've sort of touched on, that some young people have not been adhering to social distancing measures. But again, like we've all said, it's not just young people that are doing that, but sort of staying within that. How do you feel is the best way to approach and support young people and their individual needs at this time? So thinking about maybe young people that don't feel safe to be at home, are there local support networks that you're able to signpost people to ensure that they feel supported, or any sort of forms of engagement and approaches that you've been using or would like to use to kind of support that and ensure young people are supported?
I mean, the first thing I would plug is Reboot. So Sussex specifically, Reboot's a programme that's considered to be early intervention for young people who might be going down the path of offending. But in this time, the way they've developed their online alternative resources, actually, it's a really good starting place for any young person, even if you don't see yourself as someone displaying what we'd call problematic behaviour, but you're just struggling with different aspects of this, then that would definitely be the first place to go. Rather than carry on answering the question, I've read it and I kind of feel like, actually, I want to know what you think, Kai, because you're a youth worker. You know how to build relationships with young people, especially young people that, for us, it's hard to build relationships with. So, what would your advice to? What do you want to see? What would your advice to me be?
Yeah, so I definitely think there's ways, like we were talking about before, some sort of independent advisory board I think is always really useful. I've seen them working really successfully, like really simple models that can successfully work in sort of councils in London and stuff, where groups of young people can directly communicate with local police in a space that feels safe, and then also talk to Youth Justice Board, influence government policies and things like that. So I think being able to get young people and police in the same spaces, obviously at the moment they're going to need to be virtual spaces to have these sorts of conversations. But I think just ensuring that it's a priority for the police, for you guys to want to get those responses from young people, so you can actually work on some of those issues that maybe young people have about the engagement, feeling like that they're not respected or feeling like you're not respected. So just sort of breaking down some of those barriers and stuff. And then for another example, other things that I've worked with, other programs that I've worked with are like youth-led engagement programs. So there's something called Street Base, which is based up in northeast London where I work. And they're just groups of young people that will go out and casually engage with young people in the street. And they're still doing this at the moment, talking to some of the young people that aren't doing social distancing to get some of the ideas about why they're not doing that and stuff. So really, really good work. And they can, out in the open, facilitate the process of young people and police talking to each other. So you have that sort of middleman effect again, sort of building on what we were saying earlier. So it is like familiar faces, you can see people that you can relate to, and you can sort of build those relationships with police, but still doesn't feel like it's just a power imbalance. It's more of just like a casual engagement and conversation. So you can kind of see past the badge, because I think a lot of young people with biases and stereotypes struggle to do that in some ways, maybe built on negative personal experiences and stuff. I think spaces in which police can positively communicate and influence those relationships to break down some of that stigma is really useful. But again, I completely appreciate that at the moment it's really hard to do that, because obviously you can't go out and just chat to people on the street. It's not the same sorts of engagement. So I think there is definitely something around maybe doing some creative social media content, getting on Instagram and doing some Instagram lives and getting people, community champions and stuff, to come on lives and stuff with you to talk about some of the struggles to the lockdown, or starting some sort of campaign around things you can do to support your well-being, or do you know what I mean? Just things that are sort of going to be able to break down those barriers, even when you can't directly hold those conversations, I think is really sort of imperative at the moment, because we've got like a weird amount of time of a lot of people not doing anything. So I think especially in my work, we're using it as just massive consultation pieces, just being able to talk to people as much as you can virtually to get the answers that maybe we struggled to get before because people were so busy or people had different priorities and stuff. So you're sort of using this time at the moment to really build those relationships and kind of break down some of those ideas that I think maybe restricted people in the engagement processes before.
Yeah, and actually to me, that's just hearing that from you is really, really useful. So me and two others this morning were just having a bit of a brainstorming session with a bit of actually, although things did change on Sunday and Monday, actually nothing has actually changed for officers on the ground. So let's just use this time to literally take our foot off the gas a bit and go, what do we want to see our relationship with young people look like as this summer progresses, as schools return in some form or another? What makes your piece to me so useful is that part of our conversation this morning was, what can we learn from youth workers? What can we learn from the model that youth workers use, and how can we adapt that to policing so that we better engage? So that's brilliant. I haven't got any better an answer than what you had. Actually, it's really useful to make this two-way and not all me just talking at you. So thank you.
You're welcome. I completely agree. Thank you.